and that has to be corrected.
Michael, how does it feel to be Michael Douglas?
Well, who we are and how we feel, I think, depends every day. What is going on right now? I'm personally very happily married with 2 young children. That's given me tremendous thrill. Career-wise, I'm very proud of Money Never Sleeps. Had a wonderful time making this picture with a tremendous cast. I also have a small independent movie that I'm very proud of called Solitary Man that's coming out. So both my professional and private life is good. Saying that, if one takes a look at the world, and I work, as you know, with the United Nations, it's pretty disappointing. And we wonder where it's going ahead. In the area that I work on, which is elimination of nuclear weapons, there seems to be some great movement going ahead, but as you do look at the greed, as the oil spills are going on, volcanic ash, the earth seems to be speaking back.
Since we started the press conference a second, we've been discussing the moral core of the film, the moral aspect to each character. It's pretty obvious as far as Miss Mulligan's character is concerned, and I would assume Mr. LeBouf. From those people who are inside the Wall Street world, how do you, as actors, balance the absolute monstrosity of what is required from you and the humanity that somehow lies inside the character? Forget morality, but at least humanity. Mr. Lancella?
I don't think people change. I think the game changes. And in terms of my character, the game has changed. If he were in the position that Josh is in the movie, or Shia, he would do the same thing they do. You know, he's just an old lion whose time has passed and he's fighting to stay alive. But if he had some of the control that the younger men had, he'd do the same thing. He is described sometimes as more moral than the others, but he's not. He's just fading away, and that makes him somewhat sympathetic. But I don't think he's any less of a killer than the new crowd coming up.
Mr. Brolin?
What was your question? The morality of how I feel, as opposed to the morality of what the character's doing?
When you have to play that character, how do you balance both aspects of being a shark or being a killer and being, after all, a human being, whatever that means?
I think Brett and James, I mean, look, you're a human being first and foremost. I think the fact that he's so ambitious, like Charlie Sheen in the beginning, who finds his morality in that version of that movie, whereas this guy is, Brett and James, is dealing with no ceiling because of no regulations or any of that. So, you know, the theme of the first movie is greed is good, and the theme, I think, of this film is more. You know, there's no end to the possibilities of accumulation. And I think having traded myself on a very, very small level, I understand what it is to get caught up in that moment of greed where you go, I understand the kids are upstairs and they need to eat, but if I have 15 more minutes, I may make that much more money. And then they'll be able to eat more when, honestly, they're not eating. That's the reality of the situation. So to tap into that greed and to allow yourself to lose your identity and reconfigure your identity within that is, you know, morally completely bereft. And that was an interesting thing to be able to play with in this movie.
Mr. LeBouf?
Hi. Jake's situation is interesting because he's battling with, you know, who he wants to be with personally and where he wants to be professionally. And they go hand in hand almost. He's a person who was picked out of obscurity by a man named Louis Zabel, put through Fordham by this man, hired right out of business school. This man was my father figure because my father drank himself to death. And this is a man who defined himself on his profession. Brett and James essentially attacks him in a room at the Fed, ruining his definition of himself, ruining the firm, causing him to commit suicide. Jake becomes very vengeful. Who better to ask for advice on revenge than Gordon Gekko? And so he's speaking at my school, and I go to see him against the will of my fiance, Winnie, who wants nothing to do with this man because he was about himself the whole time. And she also blames him about the loss of her father. So Jake's in an interesting position because he's it's a balancing act. It's what Josh has talked about, and he's in a high stakes world, and he's a very young man. So there.
Your problem, Ms. Mulligan, was slightly different, actually, the opposite. How not to appear to be the saint of the piece.
Yeah, I think she's rebelled so far from what her father did that she's got incredibly strong ideals to the point where she dismisses $100 million, which is silly, really. I think she's with a Wall Street trader, which is a dichotomy in itself, but that she believes that he's the best version of a Wall Street trader, that he's doing it for the right reasons, and that there are good and bad people in every profession, and that this is something that he's talented at and he's skilled, and if he can use that talent and that skill to make the world better, then it's not a bad thing. But yeah, she's not flawless, and she's incredibly stubborn, and she's not forgiving. She can't forgive, and so there's not sainthood there. There's definitely her father's in her somewhere.
Thank you. Sir, and then sir.
Hi, I'm Christian Jungen from NZZ am Sonntag in Switzerland. This is for Oliver Stone. First of all, it was nice to see Zurich with red trams. They are blue, but they are nice as well in red. But my question is, when did you start to think about making a sequel, and how did the burst of the financial crisis change things?
It was actually Michael Douglas and Ed Presman approached me in 2006, and I didn't want to celebrate that culture of wealth. There didn't seem to be a point. It was ongoing, and it just seemed to be getting worse and worse. There's no reason to make the movie. After the crash, of course, all bets were off, because really it was a major heart attack. I mean, it was a triple bypass. I think they put a stent in, but I'm not sure if they've solved it. So this is serious, and it puts the whole world into a new perspective. Its time had come back. And Gordon Gekko and Michael and Ed were right. They came back to me in 2008 and with a second script, which was better, much better, and it became the basis of this movie. And thank you for doing that, Ed and Michael. Thank you for believing in me and getting me back getting back there. I mean, it had to be done. I mean, time has come.
Question over here, and then over there, and then coming down.
Hello, my name is Parviz Jahed. I'm from Iran, a film critic, and my question is to Mr. Oliver Stone. I've heard that you were planned to make a film about Iran's president, Mr. Ahmadinejad, but you have been refused after a couple of correspondence, and I wonder if you still want to make that film and follow that project, and what do you feel about the relationship of Iran and the US and at this critical situation?
In 25 words or less.
Well, briefly, it was just a comedy of errors, because we had approached him. They said no, then they said yes, but I was doing another movie at the time, W, about George Bush. I felt strongly at the one point that if we had America had succeeded in Iraq, there would be no question that George Bush would have been encouraged.